Hi guys, this is Jack Brentnell and this is the Dynasty Hotseat.
Yes. Hello, everybody, and welcome back in once again to the Dynasty Hotseat. It's the only Dynasty show that is certified Inferno, and we are back once again with another way too early 2025 rookie mock draft. Hopefully, everyone's having a good day. We got a brand new guest for you today. We got Jack Brent Hall. Jack, you do loads and loads of stuff, primarily over, of course, at the Touchdown NFL. Welcome to the show. How you doing, my friend? You want to tell people all about all the great stuff you do as well?
Yeah, all good, thanks. Thanks for having me on. So I head up the NFL draft content over at the Touchdown. So we'll be doing a draft guide this year. We did one last year. I'm hoping this one will be bigger and better than ever. And then outside of that, I am a Packers fan for my sins. So I do a bit of writing about the Packers as well. So that's the little side hustle.
Absolutely love it. Yeah, plenty of Packers fans listen to the show, I'm sure. So make sure to check out Jack for all your Packers action, and welcome along everyone who's new here. Hey, I've not got a chance to update the logo and the subscribe button yet. Give me a break. How about you just subscribe anyway? Well, about that. That's pretty good. We're getting there. I'm slowly getting there. Jack, I've got some new aesthetics here. You see me tinkering with it a little while. I'm getting there. I'm getting there with it. We're looking okay here. So yeah, thank you. We'll get there. It'll be funny finish in no time, including maybe a slightly aggressive layout I showed you backstage, which we'll get to maybe later in the season. But I'll keep that under wraps for everybody else just for now. Jack, we're going to go through a super flex mock draft with these 2025 rookies. It's been all over the place so far. Like, there's been no real consensus on who's going where. We kind of had a little chat about it at the start. But for you, at least, who's your 101?
Yeah, this is actually kind of tricky. There wasn't a clear guy for me. I ended up settling on Ashton Jeanty, the running back from Boise State, who I'm sure plenty of others will probably end up settling on. This is a guy who's, in the middle of a historic season. I don't know if he's going to end up breaking Barry Sanders' record now, but he's going to come close. And doing that in the modern day, also doing it on a team where he's the team, right? He's like, defenses are putting 8 guys in the box and they still can't stop him. I think he's a fantastic player. He's one of those rare running backs that I'd be happy taking in the first round of the NFL draft, and 101. Yeah, no problem at all.
Is there any worrying spot? We had similar chat, like, whenever Bijan was coming out, and people my question a lot of time was, is there any like landing spot that worries you for Bijan Robinson? And the answer was always no. Is there anything? Well, I suppose Atlanta with Bijan, right? That would be pretty bad. But apart from that, anywhere that really worries you?
I don't think so. I mean, obviously, running back's a position that's very much offensive line dependent. It's not entirely, but it is dependent on that. So, if you went somewhere that was, had a poor offensive line, that's obviously less good. I know everyone's talking up Dallas, which would be fun. Although their offensive line hasn't been as good recently as it used to be. But I think he's the kind of guy, he can handle high volume. And I think if you look at the stats from this year, you're not going to see much in the receiving game. But I think from what I can see, the Boise State staff just wanted him to chase that Barry Sanders record. And that's what, so he's been funneled touches in the running game. If you look at him last year, I think he had 44 receptions last year. He's not a dynamic, he's not a Christian McCaffrey guy, but he's got soft hands. He can turn a check down into a 50 yards reception if he gets the ball in space. So I think he's a really, really capable player.
Yeah, I think he is going to be, when it's all said and done, I think he will be the guy that most people are going to end up taking at 1-1 unless one of these quarterbacks gets, shockingly high draft capital to a really, really good place. I think he is going to be the guy that's going to be most people's consensus 1-1. So he's locked in as your 1-1, Jack. Who's following him at 1-2?
So I thought about quarterback here. And we'll come to quarterback fairly soon. But I settled on Ted McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona. I think he's just got a really easy game to translate to the next level. He's 6'5", 212, so he's got that kind of size. I've heard a bunch of comps thrown out for him. The one that kind of sticks with me, which maybe isn't as appealing as some of the ones I've heard, is Michael Pittman. I think he's got the deep speed of like a Mike Evans type, but he is really, really smooth for a guy of his size. Like you don't see many guys who are 6'5" and kind of snap off their routes like he does. He's really good after the catch as well. And to be honest, I actually like what I've seen from him in the slot. He's played primarily on the outside at Arizona, but I think that's because he is your kind of prototypical X receiver build. If you look at him in the slot, I think he averaged 4.48 yards per route run from the slot, which is easily the best in the country. If you look over the last couple of years, it's kind of right up there with some of the best guys. And this is a guy who's only doing it very occasionally. We're seeing the way the NFL's going, where your best receiver is kind of moved around the formation. You know, you look at Justin Jefferson, CD Lamb, they don't just sit out in the X receiver spot. I think he's the kind of guy as well that you could move around. Like I say, the speed's not elite, like the long speed, but it's fine. And I mean, he has probably one of the most absurd like catch radiuses you'll ever see.
Yeah.
Highlight reels aren't everything. You shouldn't scout on highlight reels, obviously, but there won't be a receiver with a more entertaining highlight reel this year than Ted McMillan.
Yeah, and for those people that are going to go back and maybe look at the statistics, you'll notice about Ted that every now and again there's a down week, and then he has a boom week, and then a down week and a boom week. For me, that's not really to do with the player. That's to do with literally every other player around him, right?
Yeah, I mean, that team they lost a lot of guys last year, transferring out. Noah Fafita, the quarterback, hasn't looked the same this year. He and Ted McMillan have played together since high school. Which is part of the reason you think, like, why is like a top wide receiver at Arizona? And it's partly because it was like he wanted to play with his high school quarterback. But yeah, he's one of those guys who's a little bit of a victim of circumstance. He's not, and there is another receiver we'll come on to later, not to preempt it, but who is another one who I think talented receiver, just not in a great circumstance, and the production maybe isn't always as you'd expect. But I think that the talent's there from an NFL perspective. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah, no doubt from me anyway. Yeah, he's looking ready to go. I think he'll be top. He's got to go top 10, right? He'll be a top 10 pick.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be some debate depending on what you're looking for a receiver. So I could see some teams maybe look somewhere else in terms of the first receiver off the board. Like I say, he's not your kind of deep speed merchant. And I know, some teams in the NFL really like that. But I think, I mean, this is not a top heavy class. I don't think there's like loads of guys that are going to be pushing him down the board. And I don't think, as much as people maybe want to talk up the quarterbacks, I don't think we're in a position where we're going to be getting a bunch of them going, top 5. We might get one, maybe 2 if somebody's desperate, but that'll allow a guy like Ted McMillan to be top 10. And if there's a bunch of teams like the college pipeline of receivers. Like recently, if you look at highly drafted receivers, it's actually been pretty stable. It's one of those positions that guys seem to be able to just come in and produce. I mean, how many times have we seen it recently, right? Where guys have just come in and like there's been no kind of dip. It's just been straight up the kind of high end. Every year there is like a rookie or two who is like in contention for, top 5 in receiving yards or all pro, or, there's no reason he can't be that next guy.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think he's a supreme talent. At 1-2, pretty good grab there. And who's next on your list, Jack, at 1-3?
So for me, this is where we dig into the quarterbacks. And I went with Jalen Milroe, the quarterback from Alabama. Now, I'll be interested to see if he does declare. There seems to be mixed opinion on whether he does. He's got more eligibility left. He's a 2-year starter, so it's not like he's not got loads of tape on him, but he may want to return because he has the tools that make you think that if he maybe adds a little more polish and refinement to his game, he could be. Like, there's no reason in terms of his traits that he can't be kind of a really, really high draft pick. I mean, the first thing about him is the rushing ability, right? And certainly from a fantasy perspective, like, he is fast. Like, I think he's been clocked at a 4.3, and this is a guy who's 225 pounds, right? So he's like immediately tier 1 rushing threat at the next level. He's really shifty, and like some of these guys that come out, they'll be like straight line fast, but they're not. Like, I didn't think that Jaden Daniels was like the most elusive guy. He just had like that like burst that could just like erase angles. Like, Milroe is shifty, and he's got a bit of power to him as well, which Daniels obviously didn't have. So I think that's obviously just giving you a really high floor. He's got over 20 rushing touchdowns this year, I think. He's I want to say he's the first to have 20 rushing touchdowns and 20 passing touchdowns. It might be since Jalen Hurts. It might be even longer. But he's a proper kind of dual threat, live arm. Like, I'd say you'd be comfortably above average arm in the NFL, probably top 10 type arm talent. So he's got that as well. His physical profile, and this might, if I say this, make people go, well, why are you taking him at 103? His physical profile reminds me a bit of Justin Fields. And I'm not saying him as a player reminds me of Justin Fields, but like, similar build. I've heard the Jalen Hurts comparison, but he's way faster than Hurts. He's got that kind of makeup, and I'll be honest, when I watched Milroe in the summer, I think he was like my QB8. Like, I didn't see it. I didn't get it. The pocket presence wasn't good. He took way too many sacks. He was way too eager, like a lot of these athletes are, to just resort to rushing. His 2024 tape is completely different. Like, his scramble rate has dropped from, I think it was like 14% to 6%. He is much like better at navigating pressure. He will stay in the pocket. He doesn't resort to just, okay, my first read's not open, I'm going to go. He will try and work things out. Now, the accuracy is not always there. There have been a few games, like the Tennessee game. If you watch the Tennessee game, like, that was rough. But like, every week there is a like an amazing throw he will make that is not caught, and it won't be in the box score. Like, I watched the game from this weekend, and you go in, box score, nothing special. He had like a 60-yard dime to Ryan Williams that was dropped.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of thing. You might look at the box score and you're going to go, okay, maybe not the greatest passer, but I think he's got more than a lot of people are giving him credit for. There'll be a lot of lazy narratives, as there often are with kind of great athletes at quarterback, and say, oh, he's not really much of a passer. But I think he, of all the guys, has the tools I'd be interested in.
Yeah, he's just the highest upside. I've said for a few weeks now. If you're playing in one QB leagues, there should be absolutely no doubt in your mind who the first quarterback off the board is here. Like, it has to be Jalen Milroe, and I love taking him the first quarterback off the board in Superflex. It's not like any of these other guys are like these elite generational talents. They're just not. There's some solid prospects in there, and I think Milroe is at the tippy top of that in terms of what he can do for your fantasy team. It maybe not NFL wise, he might not be the best NFL quarterback out there, but this is about fantasy football, so it's about scoring points, and Jalen Milroe really gives you the best opportunity to do that, in my opinion, anyway. So I love that pick at 1-3. Jack, are you going back to the quarterback well at 1-4, or what are you up to?
I am indeed. Yeah, I'm going Cam Ward here, and I don't know if it's one I feel great about, but I think obviously Superflex, it's the quarterback value. I do like Ward as a prospect. I think he's maybe a little overhyped, certainly based on like kind of social media type hype. I don't think the NFL's as high on him as a lot of fans are. But yeah, quarterback from Miami, really interesting prospect. He's a fifth-year senior. He started in the FCS at Incarnate Word. He then went to Washington State for 2 years. this is also a guy who, when he was in high school, he was like running I think it was a wing T offense. So he like barely passed the ball. So he was I think he was a 0-star recruit. Like you look at his traits, you're like, how was this guy a 0-star recruit? Well, he never passed the ball. So he's not going to get much love. But he's grown like steadily over the years. I think I first like had him on my radar in terms of the draft after his first year at Washington State. And there was flashes, like the arm is brilliant. Like he's got that kind of ability to work from multiple platforms. He can kind of throw on the move really well. But the polish wasn't there. It was an air raid kind of offense that you're looking at and going, okay, but what out of this is translating to the NFL? Not a lot, right? It's lots of screens, lots of kind of one reads. At Miami, he's been playing a kind of different brand of football. It's a much more pro-ready kind of comparable offense. He's had over 4,000 passing yards, 36 touchdowns, I think only 7 picks. Now, the reason he's not my QB1 is I am a little nervous about some of the traits to his game. Like there are a couple of red flags that kind of worry me. Part of that is the hero ball. Now, I don't mind the guy who plays hero ball, right? Like I said at the start, I'm a Packers fan, right? If you watch Jordan Love every week, he does that. And it's fun. It's great. And it can lead to some great stuff, right? Like you don't get some amazing plays if you don't have that I can do anything attitude. Yeah. But there are plenty of times where you're watching like and going, oh my God, what are you doing? Like it's first down. Like what are we doing? Cam Ward has a bit of that, where he will do, and if people go and watch the game they played against Cal, there is a throw that is kind of stuck in my brain where he's scrambling out to his right. I think it's like second down, so he doesn't need to do anything stupid. Scrambling out to his right, and then he tries to throw completely back across the other side of the field, and he gets picked, and it's taken for 6. There are those kind of throws that worry me. Yeah. I don't think he's a great kind of pocket navigator either. He does drift a lot, which will get you in trouble, especially at the NFL level, where you've got these edge rushers who are running 4-4, 4-5. You won't last long doing that. Now, he's been growing as a kind of player and as a pocket passer for years, so there's every reason to believe that can continue. But there's some nervousness there for me that just prevents me kind of buying all the way in on the top 5 type hype that he's been getting.
I had my friend Alex on the show who sort of said his like media, and you brought up the media here as well as like the huge hype around him. The media persona of Cam Ward is that he's like doesn't panic like whenever he's being rushed. He's like cool and calm and collected. But Alex said, no, he's just not reading a defense quick enough. Like that's what's happening. He's not cool and calm. He's just not thinking fast enough, and it's being spun as this cool, calm guy. Is that something that you kind of see as well?
Yeah, it's really mixed, right? There'll be times where he's just kind of unfazed, and you're looking at it and going, okay, this is great. And there are others where he'll have a clean pocket, and then he will just drift. And he will drift straight outside his tackle, right into an oncoming defender, and then he'll be forced to throw off his back foot. And you're looking at it and going, you know what, if you'd stayed where you were or climbed the pocket, like that's such a big thing for college prospects, like projecting into the NFL. It's the stepping up into pressure. Like that's what made Tom Brady so great for so long, was he would step up into pressure and deliver. And the amount of times where you watch Cam Ward and you go, okay, like even sometimes the play works, right? He gets the ball out, and you look at him going, yeah, but you got it out and it was a 5-yard completion. But if you like stayed in the pocket, worked through your reads, there was a dig route over the middle for 15 yards that you could have had. And that just worries me, because if you look at the guys that we've seen that have had those traits that have come into the league, he's not Zach Wilson, but if you go back and watch Zach Wilson, there was a lot of that kind of slightly murky pocket management, lots of crazy highlight reel out of structure throws. It's just not sustainable down to down. Everybody loves watching Mahomes, but what makes Mahomes so great is that he does all the little things well in between. And then there's that stuff on top. And I think, sometimes people get kind of carried away with the highlights. And it's really easy to, right? Sometimes you're watching him, especially if you're watching like just the broadcast tape, you're like, wow, this guy's amazing. And then you go back and watch it
Yeah.
and you realize missed opportunities all over the place.
Yeah, I think he's a bit of an unpolished diamond for sure, but it's definitely worth, especially in Superflex, taking him high up, definitely. So
Yeah.
I have no arguments with 104 at all. And let's move along to 1-5. Where are you going following Cam Ward?
So this was a tricky one. I ended up going with a receiver, and I went with Luther Burden, who is the wide receiver from Missouri. When I mentioned that there's a receiver whose production's kind of not been quite there this year, that's Luther Burden, right?
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, he's a former 5-star prospect, had offers from kind of the great and good of college football. He chose to stay local. He's a Missouri kid. He chose to stay local, and it kind of paid off, right? If you watched him last year, sophomore season, he was brilliant. 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns. He hasn't been the same this year. The Mizzou offense hasn't been great. And I think it's really easy for defenses to go, okay, he's the guy. We can single kind of him out. But that being said, I think there's lots of traits there that make you really confident about what he can be at the NFL level, right? So I've heard people compare him to Deebo Samuel. I don't think he's Deebo, right? Nobody's Deebo. But that gives you an idea of what kind of player we're talking about. It's a really creative yak threat. He's super twitched up, but he's also like pretty tough. He's 5'11", 205, so he's not big, but he plays tough. Certainly after the catch. My favorite Luther Burden stat from this year. So he's forced 29 missed tackles on 61 receptions. If you work that out on a kind of rate basis, he's forcing more missed tackles per touch than Ashton Jeanty is. Right? which okay, I know it's 61 receptions versus 300 and something carries, but like it's impressive. Like, and if you compare it to other receivers across the country, I think it's still the top. So he's super elusive, and you think about the way the NFL is trending. We're moving towards kind of split field coverage. We're moving towards teams having to attack underneath to open up the big play. We're not in the bombs away era that we were even maybe 5 years ago. So a guy like Burden, who you can give a 5-yard kind of slant to, or you can use him on a tunnel screen, he'll turn those 5 yards into 15 yards. And having that ability to do that, I think, is really, really important in the modern NFL. So I'm willing to kind of trust those traits and trust the tape that I've seen from him in previous years, and not put too much weight in what's been a fine season in 2024. Let's not upset, but not a great one.
Yeah, he's not had that ability, like, and this is kind of what separates the two for me as well as you. Like with Ted McMillan, while things haven't been going perfectly around him, he's still found a way to like become amazing. Whereas Burden, while not being awful, you're right, just hasn't really lit up any scenes. If this is your first year watching college football and someone told you that's the second best receiver in college, you'd be like, really? Like, you kind of be a little bit surprised, but it's kind of like, you have to trust in what he's done before. And like you said, not had a bad. I'm just looking at where I've sort of got him just based on this season, and I've got him right alongside guys like Dylan Bell and guys like Ja'Cory Brooks, just in terms of like production and what I've seen this year, who've been fine this year. But obviously, I'm not taking them ahead of Luther Burden based on what he's done before. You have to factor that in, right?
Yeah, and it's always balancing it, isn't it? Because what you want to see is like I said with Cam Ward, what you want to see with prospects is that kind of clear path of development. Ashton Jeanty's the same. I mean, Ted McMillan kind of is, but also he's just kind of started producing at a high level and just carried on at that exact level. So when players regress in their final season in terms of statistics, there is always a pause for thought, right? We've seen, every year there's a player or two who starts the year out as a consensus first rounder, and then by the end of the year, we're like, oh, that guy, I forgot he even existed. Now, I don't think Burden is that, but you do have to, I think, just dig into the tape, right? It's asking, well, what's the reason? Is it injury? Is it poor surroundings? Is it just that he's not playing well? Right? Because there's been prospects where that's been the case. I think it's more of a surrounding factor thing than it is a burden thing. So I'd still be comfortable with him at 105.
Yeah, that's Ollie Gordon's title this year. We'll give. Actually, he did better. I can't dig out Ollie Gordon too much, but I think that's his job this year. He'll probably stay next year though. So Luther Burton's in at 1-5. Who's following that? Is it Ollie Gordon? Imagine it was Ollie Gordon.
No, that's another disappointing one. No, I've gone with Travis Hunter, right?
Yeah.
So and there's obviously risk, right? He's wide receiver and corner. We're going to be sat here for every draft cycle. There is a debate that everyone gets tired of, right? Like, do you remember Joe Burrow's hand size?
Yeah,
like
Kenny Pickett as well, doubled up on that.
That was like oh my god, it was weeks of like, can Joe Burrow play football? We're gonna all be sick in about 4 months' time of where's Travis Hunter going to play, corner or wide receiver, right? Like, it's a legit question, but it's gonna be constant for months. Now, I think, and this might be a surprise given that I've just said I'll take him at 106, I think he's better at corner. I think his skill set is more rare at corner. What I've seen from him is some of the most incredible ball skills, awareness, like his ability to play zone in particular is just like, I can't think of a guy I've seen like that. However, put yourself in Travis Hunter's shoes, right? Now, if you just look at contracts, right? The top paid corner in the NFL right now is Jalen Ramsey, and he's on $24 million a year. There's 12 receivers earning more than that, right? If you just look at players earning more than 20 million, I think there's 5 corners earning more than 20 million. There's 23 wide receivers, right? So it's like, follow the money. If you're in this to make generational wealth, which of course every player is, like, you'd be crazy not to go wide receiver. And like the consistency as well in terms of season to season, wide receivers generally fare better. Corner it's a position that's tough to age at. It's also a position that's tough to kind of find that season to season consistency. I think he can be a great receiver. Like, I'm putting him here purely on the basis of his receiving skill set. I think he is a top 10 prospect at both positions. Which is why I think he's the consensus kind of number 1 overall pick in if you look at mock drafts now. He's had like 1,100 yards and 14 touchdowns as a part-time receiver. Like, this is a guy who's been a very good receiver and a very good corner while doing both positions. He won't play both ways in the NFL. I just can't see it. There is maybe a world where he plays corner and a bit of receiver, but like, I don't see it happening. So just imagine how good he can be at receiver if that's the position he plays full time, right? He's already one of the best in the country and he's part-time. So like, imagine how good he can become if that is his full-time position. So I'd be willing to take that risk here. Yeah.
Do you put any weight into, I was listening to the Wildcard Devi podcast, and the two lads, Jack and Phil, brought up, he's been listed for the Blindikoff is the wide receiver best, but he's not been listed for the cornerback equivalent of that. Do you put any weight into that at all? Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird. Like, I don't know how he's not been put on that list.
Yeah.
Those awards are always a bit strange. The discourse around Hunter's funny. Like, I think it's Colorado, right? So like, they're a divisive team, and I think their players can be divisive. So I think maybe he's going to be one of those guys that people overthink a bit, but I just think, he's not the biggest, but he's got incredible hands. His ball skills and catch radius are really good. He's actually weirdly good in contested catches as well for a guy who is like 185 pounds. And after the catch, he's also really dynamic. He reminds me a little bit after the catch of Garrett Wilson, who I was a big fan of when he was coming. He was my wide receiver 1 in that class. Now, he's not the route runner that Garrett Wilson is, but like I say, he's playing the position part-time. He's not going to be like an Ohio State level fastidious route runner playing at part-time. right? But there's no reason to think he can't get there because he's got the athletic traits to do that.
Yeah, he's the story to follow, right? And he is almost locked in to win this Heisman, at least according to the betting odds, right? It's pretty much nailed on that he's going to be the guy there. So it'll be interesting to see where he comes up, and he's locked in at 106 to you for now, anyway. And who's following up Hunter at 1-7?
So I've gone with his teammate, Shedeur Sanders.
Nice.
Which this may, in a few months' time, look like a rogue pick. But I think, again, I'm baking in the value of the quarterback position, both in terms of the NFL draft and the scarcity of it, and the fact that teams are always going to draft them probably higher than they should be if you just did a pure kind of big board, right? And we saw that last year. Whatever you think of Michael Penix and JJ McCarthy, they weren't, and same with Bo Nix as well, right? They weren't top 15 players in the class, but quarterbacks, right? Now, and also, in Superflex, the value of quarterbacks. So Shedeur is going to be worth more. What appeals to me about Shedeur Sanders? Now, he's going to be super divisive, partly because of his on-field play, but I think also like the off-field stuff is a problem, right?
Yeah.
If you listen to guys who are plugged in to kind of NFL scouting rooms, there are lots of teams that are saying he's not for us, right? There's the baggage surrounding him. There's also the stuff he's done. He threw his offensive line under the bus after a bad game earlier this year. He's, there are the kind of diva traits, right, for want of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
However, you cannot argue with the production, right? He's a 4-year starter at college, right? He was 2 years at Jackson State, 2 years at Colorado. He's been successful wherever he's been. This year, nearly 4,000 yards, 35 touchdowns, 8 picks. Incredibly accurate, probably the most accurate quarterback in the draft. And when we look at the NFL, having that accuracy is really important. Being able to hit throws at all 3 levels, which he can do. He does the kind of the nerdy NFL stuff really well. He throws over the middle well. He throws with anticipation well, which again, if you're projecting to the next level, those are really important. There's a lot of college guys who will win on screens and go routes. It doesn't work at the NFL. Sanders does the proper stuff. Smart pre-snap operator, setting protections, identifying coverages. I think there's a lot there that NFL teams will like. I think his selling point for me is in a class with quarterbacks that are really volatile, he's the high floor guy. You look at Milroe, you look at Ward, we've talked about those guys. Those guys have sky-high ceilings, but the floor is rock bottom. You're kind of playing with fire with both of them. Sanders, I think the floor is a lot higher. Now, the physical traits are not going to wow you. The arm is fine. It's not great. The mobility is fine. It's not great. None of them are bad from an NFL level, but they're not the kind of traits that you watch and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I just saw that. But if you've got a high floor NFL quarterback that can be a dependable starter, that's really valuable, right? You don't need to be the toolsiest guy in the room.
Yeah, I think he's going to come in and do a really, really solid job. And I think this kind of harks back to what we were kind of speaking about earlier. And you have to be careful not to be sucked into the trap of thinking Shedeur Sanders is the best NFL quarterback, so he must be the best fantasy quarterback. It's not really how it works all of the time. You have to consider about how many points is he going to score. Is he going to be a safe kind of guy? And maybe you take him for the long-term prospects. You think I can plug and play this guy forever? He'll be a guy that can keep, or do you go for it and try and get all the points you can get? And might be something that burns bright and doesn't burn very long, but take the risk. And Sanders more of a slow burner. I really like, just looking at the order of the draft, I really like if he got paired up with Malik Neighbors. I really like that for him.
Yeah. It's the kind of thing he's got that ability to use a guy like that who's got that kind of yak skill set. Put the ball on him, quick, get the ball out. I think he could be good. I think he has he has what it takes. I think he's more landing spot dependent than some other guys. But I just think that floor is like that's really valuable. It's really I know it's not like the sexy play, but floor is really important.
Yeah. We're seeing this year that guys like that, the safety like Bo Nix was that guy, right? And look at him, he's like top 10 quarterback anyway. So it's like being competent is enough sometimes, right?
Yeah. There's lots of teams that would die for competence at quarterback. So yeah,
absolutely. So he's a great pick there at 1-7. Couple more to go to round up the first round, starting with pick 1-8.
So this one, I have a feeling I'm going to be higher on than most people. I don't know if I will be higher on kind of when it comes to the actual draft, because I think he will rise at boards. But it's Ohio State running back Trevion Henderson. Now, if you'd asked me a few months ago, who do I prefer, Quinshon Judkins, the other Ohio State running back, or Trevion Henderson, I'd have said Judkins. Now, from an NFL perspective, I may still prefer Judkins. I've not kind of gone through my regrading process for this year fully yet. So Judkins was higher in summer scouting. Henderson was my RB4. But I've actually come around to him. I feel like I've kind of gone the opposite way. A lot of people started really high on Henderson and have kind of faded, whereas I started quite low and I was not a big fan, and I've come to like him. The reason I'm so high on him, certainly for fantasy purpose, is he's a good runner. He's explosive as hell. Like he's seriously quick. If you watch his tape, 2022 and to a lesser extent 23, when he'd been having injury issues, some of that was kind of gone. He was still quick, but he wasn't. You watch him this year, he's like back to full fitness, and he is so fast. Like there was a carry he had against Oregon, where he's going against some of the best athletes in college football, and he just runs away from them all. He's so quick, really explosive. I think the thing that I really love about him from a fantasy perspective is he's a really good receiving back. He's really good. He can flex out wide and run routes. But I think what's really important, and this is definitely not a sexy thing, is he can pass protect. And I know, that's not going to score you points, but to get on the field consistently in the NFL on third down, you need to be able to pass protect. And he's so good in pass protection. And that will get him opportunities on third down, and then that will see him get catches and touches. I think he's just well-rounded. He's not, don't get me wrong, he's not the toughest runner, but he's elusive. He's quick. The vision is decent. It's not amazing, but it's good enough. And he's got a 3-down skill set. And there's lots of backs in this class who feel like they're either one or the other. They're like a scat back type, or they're an early down guy that you don't think is much of a plus as a receiver. I think Henderson has the ability to be kind of a plus contributor on kind of running downs and on passing downs, which I think is really important.
Yeah, and I think you brought up the really interesting thing, and it is that reception work. I was kind of looking just the other day about who's currently ranked up highly in terms of the running backs this year, because it was just kind of some names that popped up were like Chuba Hubbard being up so hard and things like that. And then you kind of notice, apart from Derrick Henry, every other running back in the top 30 has at least 20 receptions this year, at least. So if you don't have that kind of receiving floor, your odds on being a top 20 running back are be Derrick Henry, and that's it. And there's not a lot of him going around, right?
Yeah. You've got to be the kind of guy who can weather like 30 touches a game and just be ludicrously big and fast and strong. There and the game's kind of moving away from, like, Henry feels like the last of a dying breed in a way. That true workhorse that, like, you could have put him like back 30 years and he would still have been amazing, right? We're moving more towards committee backfields, but even where there is a lead back role, that lead back is expected to be able to be there on third down. Like, you look at those teams that are going, okay, we have a lead back, like, again, the Packers, right? Josh Jacobs, they do have other backs, but they want Jacobs because they know they can trust him on all 3 downs to be useful. And I think having that skill set is really, really important. You might not be a guy who's going to get 25 carries a game, but you don't need to be if you're getting 15 carries and 5 receptions. Like, that's great.
Yeah, it does the job for sure. And Henderson definitely more reliable receiving back. We'll see if we get to his teammate a little bit later. But let's move on to 1-9 for now.
Yeah, so another running back here. I'm going with Caleb Johnson from Iowa. So the big riser who actually he declared for the draft, I think this morning or last night. So he is definitely in.
Nice.
He's a big guy, right? He's 6 foot, 225 pounds. He's got some power to his game. He's a really natural, like, zone runner, that kind of one cut and go type guy. Immediately, like 5 plays into watching him, he reminded me of Najee Harris, which people maybe have mixed opinions on Harris. I don't know like how he's seen these days, but like there's a lot to like there, right? You've got a quick, not fast, but quick guy who is a good size, has a bit of power to his game, can be useful as a receiver. You know, again, not a difference maker, soft hands. He had although Johnson did have I think it was like 74-yard receiving touchdown last week against Nebraska, which if you haven't seen it, go see it because it's like one of the most hilarious, like crazy runs that you will see from anyone not named Ashton Jeanty this year.
Yeah.
But I think, he's not the most explosive. He's not the twitchiest guy, but it's just really easy to kind of translate that kind of skill set. And he's got enough as a receiver that, again, you're confident he can be there on all 3 downs and be an asset for you.
Yeah, it's funny you said Najee Harris. I kind of seen. I think it's just I'm a Chiefs fan. I kind of seen Kareem Hunt whenever I looked at him as well. But I also seen Kareem Hunt in Najee Harris, so I can see how like kind of all blends them together. And yeah, he was someone I've said a few times in the show. Like whenever the season started, I was like, oh, I really like this Iowa like running back. It's like surely no one's paying attention to him, but not every single person in the show is like taking him in the first round. I'm going to have to find a new guy to be my guy. I can't have a guy in the first round to be my guy, right?
It's always that thing, right? Like so every week I've been doing a scouting notebook, which drops kind of Mondays or Tuesdays on Touchdown, just kind of talking about some of the players I've kind of enjoyed that week or who stood out to me. And I can't remember what week it was, but quite early, like I was watching him, and I was like, he's really good. And there's always that thing, isn't there, where like you've not heard much buzz on a guy, and you're like, am I out on this? Like, am I missing something? Because I think he's better than the hype he's getting. And then when you then see, like, him talked up as a top 50 pick, you're like, oh, okay, no, it's fine. Like, I wasn't wildly wrong. Like, just trust your instincts. And like, it doesn't take long to watch a guy like this, and it'd be like, oh, okay, he's good. But yeah, he's going to be rising up boards. He's going to be I don't think he's going to be a sleeper this year. So you're definitely going to need to find a new guy.
Yeah, I got burned. I got burned bad last year. It was I got burned out with Cody Schrader last year. I was watching Cody Schrader, loved it, and just nothing. I'm still kind of wrap my head around how he was like, I guess like 6th all time in SEC rushing yards and just undrafted. Like, don't quite understand how that happened, but here we are. He was a lot older, I suppose.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was. I think he was a 6th year senior, I think. Yeah, but very productive. But yeah, Johnson's obviously. I think Johnson is a junior, so he's young, good size, decent athlete. Like a lot to like.
Yeah, he's not going to go undrafted like poor old Cody there. But I still believe in you, Cody Schrader, if you're listening. So let's go from Caleb Johnson to 110, 3 picks left. Who are you going with your 10th pick in the first round?
This is probably just kind of one of those my guy ones where I'm putting him in here, and I'm confident he's going to end up somewhere around this range come kind of draft time. And it's the Stanford wide receiver, Alec Ayamana. He is another one. I seem to have a thing for wide receivers who are having underwhelming 2024 seasons. That's what you get for being a receiver at Stanford, right? But I think he's being slept on. I think I'll be interested to see if he does declare, because he's a redshirt. I think he's a redshirt junior, so he can go back. But I think he has serious talent and the kind of traits that very few other receivers in this class have. So he's 6'2", 210. So he's like a big-bodied, ex-receiver frame. He's got a track background. He ran 100 meters, 200 meters in high school. He also competed in a long jump. So he is seriously explosive as well. Has the long speed as well. When I said Ted McMillan doesn't necessarily have the speed to kind of burn people deep, Ironmanner does. If you need selling on him as a prospect, go back and watch his game against Colorado last year. He went up against Travis Hunter, and if you just watch that game with Travis Hunter, you would not think that Travis Hunter was a top 10 cornerback prospect. Ironmanner had 13 catches for 294 yards and 3 touchdowns. It was like the only way I can kind of describe this is if you ever play Madden and you find that one play that's like the cheese play and you just keep hitting it over and over and over again. It was that, right? Like they kept using him on these slants and his release package is so good. For a guy who's still quite young and hasn't got a ton of experience, his release package is so good. And he was just getting open, like 2 steps into the route, he was open. And you could just see the Colorado defense being like, I don't know what we do about this. Like, this guy is just, I can't stop him. Now, he's not quite had the same production this year, but like Stanford's offense is not good. I looked this up actually because I was like, well, how bad is that passing game? So if you just look at catchable targets, 62% of his targets are catchable. Now, if you compare that to some of the other guys we talked about, McMillan's at 71%, Burden's at 80%, and Hunter's at 83%, right? And he's, like I say, 62%. So way down. So it's not surprising. Yeah, he's still got 110 targets, but like if only 60 odd of them are catchable, you're not going to produce brilliantly. I think he's, like I say, got size. He's like a legit yak threat. Great release package. He's shown he can do it against top competition, right? I've not seen anybody else have a game like that against Hunter. McMillan had a good game last year, but like not like that. So I feel like I'm willing to buy the ceiling here.
I love it. I absolutely love it. He was the guy I was really looking forward to seeing last year. And part of me was like, oh, is he going to be one of these like transfer portal guys? Is he primed to like move to like a different program? But maybe he's kind of focused. Stanford's known for like being a high end like educational college, right?
Yeah. I wonder if he's just like, I'm just gonna get my Stanford degree and then leave. I don't like if he doesn't. I don't know when he's going to graduate, but like it wouldn't shock me if he is able to graduate this year that he might return to school and then transfer to like a big SEC school, come out next year. But if he does come out this year, like, yeah, I just think there's not many guys who are that size who move like that and who have shown that they can do it against top competition. That's not an accident, right? You don't have 294 yards in a game on chance, right? It's skill. And he's just my kind of receiver. Like I like those, big-bodied but also really explosive, fluid, yak threat kind of guys. So I think he's the kind of guy who will get more love as the draft process goes on, as we kind of move out of what has been a maybe underwhelming statistical season and people are watching the tape. It will be a bit more love for him. So I'm confident, even though this one sounds probably quite high at the moment.
I love it. I absolutely love seeing him up this high. We haven't got him into the first round yet. He's been mentioned quite a few times in second round and like sleeper picks. So I love to see him all the way up here. And you're right, you're shooting for the ceiling with him for sure. So he's in at 110. 2 more picks left. Jack, where are we going next at 111?
So I'm going with a tight end. And I have 2 that are quite close together on my board. But I've gone with the one that's maybe less fancied now, which is Colston Loveland from Michigan. The other one being Tyler Warren from Penn State, who is not my 12th pick. But he's getting a lot of love at the moment because he has been brilliant. So worth just shouting out how great Tyler Warren has been. Colston Loveland, 6'5", 245 pounds. So he's got your kind of prototypical tight end size. Really, really impressive athlete. Like, he is a really, really smooth mover, kind of Dalton Kincaid type athlete, kind of size
Yeah.
profile coming out. I think with Michigan's passing offense being so putrid, I think people have just stopped. Like, I won't turn on a Michigan game this year, right? Like, obviously, I watched the Ohio State game last week, but
Yeah.
I don't want to watch that offense. But if you actually like watch what he's been able to do, despite one of the worst passing offense situations in the FBS, he's still been really productive, right? So he's had this year, he's had 56 catches, 582 yards, and 5 touchdowns. If you look at kind of advanced numbers as well, like they're really promising. 26.5 threat rate, which is percentage of routes targeted. 2.67 yards per route run, which for a tight end is pretty good stuff. He is, as I said, a really good athlete. He's got good hands. He's good yak threat, good body control. He's a true kind of receiving first tight end. He's not the best blocker, but like from fantasy perspective, like that doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Tight ends will see the field now without being great blockers. A lot of them aren't. Like Brock Bowers, like I'm not saying he's a bad blocker. He's not a
Yeah.
great one. I mean, look how he's doing now, right? Like, nobody cares. Loveland is one of the youngest players in the draft. He doesn't turn 21 until April, so draft month, right? So he is Tyler Warren. I don't know if there's actual figures on like when he was born, because some players it's not always clear. But he's like a 6th year senior, so
Yeah.
he's definitely older than 21, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Loveland is young. Now I know that doesn't. Some people value age more. It's not the biggest thing for me, but at tight end, I think is really important because that's a position where players tend to grow into it a little bit more as they get older. So if you've got a guy who is performing this well and he's still only 20, and let's not forget, like he was doing this last year as well when he was 19 in the Big Ten against top competition. There's a lot to like there, and I know that the Michigan team has been just dreadful this year, but I just think that kind of size, speed, receiving threat stuff, it goes high these days if you're a tight end, like a mismatch weapon. I did see Dane Brugler at The Athletic said that some teams are actually looking at him and evaluating him as a receiver, which is crazy because he's 245 pounds. So like I don't know how that works, but like that speaks to how good of a mover and an athlete he is. And like I say, look at what Brock Bowers is doing this year, right? I know tight end's always a little bit more dicey, but Loveland is not far off Bowers in terms of where he is as a prospect, I don't think.
Do you think there's any chance, because he is so young, that I know they recently just picked up Bryce Underwood, right? I don't know. Any chance that they try and set a course and, hey, we'll pay you to stick around another year, like help out this kid, right?
Yeah, and maybe there is, because obviously, he's a true junior, right? And it may be that, I actually have a real quarterback now.
Yeah.
But I suppose it all depends on what kind of buzz he's getting from the NFL. If he's being talked up as a kind of top 15, 20 pick, I think it's so difficult to turn that money down. Even with NIL being like good money these days, I think if you're getting that kind of range, it's so tough not to take a 4-year contract with whatever you'd be earning as the 15th, 20th overall pick. So I think it will depend a lot on what he's kind of hearing from the league.
I wonder if he does declare, if this is the year, like Kansas City really pull the trigger on, let's replace Travis Kelce. He could be it, right?
You've got 2 guys in him and Tyler Warren who are both like good sized, legit athletes, really good receivers, great yak threats. No one is going to be Kelce, but if you want to still have a passing game that has a truly like dynamic, mismatched tight end, there are far worse years to have that. Like college tight ends, like they're often not. It's hard to find guys that you feel really comfortable about kind of projecting to the next level because the game is really different at the college level. But Loveland and Warren actually are players that you just feel, okay, that they're going to just get there on a Sunday and they'll be absolutely fine. Like no question.
Yeah, absolutely great. You did say, Tyler, we're not your 12th pick. So who is your final pick of the first round then?
I felt like I couldn't get out of this first round without giving some love to Quinshon Judkins, the other running back from Ohio State.
Yeah.
So as I said, he was my RB2 coming into the season behind Ashton Jeanty. He, to be honest, he was more like my running back 1B rather than running back 2. Right? They were very close. They're not now. I think that's more to do with Jeanty just going insane than anything that Judkins has done. So he started his career at Ole Miss. He was there for 2 years. He was incredibly productive, like right off the bat. Like there's a lot to like about his kind of production profile. He's 6 foot 219, so he's a big back. Good kind of burst, athleticism, power. He was the first. I think he was the first player since Herschel Walker in the SEC to have 15 touchdowns or more in each of his first 2 seasons.
Wow.
So, like, we're talking about a guy who was productive right off the bat, who has been a very good college back. Obviously transferred to Ohio State in the summer, sharing the backfield with Trevion Henderson. Now, if you look at their production, like a rate production, it's still been pretty good. It's obviously not been the level it was when he kind of owned the Ole Miss backfield. Now, in terms of why I like him, it is that kind of physical makeup. He is explosive. He has that kind of hole hitting ability. He'll run through guys, whereas Henderson doesn't. He will kind of run through guys if you need a few yards, 4th and short, or you're in the red zone. He's a great guy, and I can see him getting those goal line carries. The thing that kind of has lowered him for me is when you watch him at Ohio State. One of the things I really liked about him at Ole Miss was he was quite a patient runner, and I thought his vision was quite good. And I don't know if it's just because he's sharing the backfield, so he gets less opportunities now. But there'll be games where he'll come in, and it's almost like he's so eager to make a play that he just doesn't really think. And the amount of times where you see him, and like last year, he would have been running with patience, finding the hole, pressing, and then hitting it. This year, it's more, there's kind of a hole there. I'm just going to run at it. And then he runs straight into the defense. And then it's, 4-yard gain, when it could have been, if he'd been a bit more patient, 9, 10, 11, 12 yard gain. Now, like, I don't know how much to put in that because I've seen it. Like, if you watch his Ole Miss tape, he showed it. But it just worries me a bit when the player you're watching in their 3rd year doesn't feel as complete as the player you saw in their 3rd year. This isn't a guy who I'm going, his production is down. It's the tape isn't as good. And that's a little concerning. But I've obviously still got him in my first round because I think he's just got a really, really translatable profile. He's a solid receiver, right? He's not a guy you're going to be trying to feed touches to in the passing game. Yeah. But he's, if you get him on a screen or on like a kind of check down, because he's got that size and the burst and the power, he can create yards. But you're not going to be flexing him out into the slot. You're not going to be running him on, angle routes out of the backfield. He's kind of good enough as a receiver, is how I'd have him.
Yeah, I agree. So we probably would have seen a lot more receiving work out of him if it wasn't, if he'd stayed in Ole Miss, for example, we would have seen maybe a few more checkdowns towards him. So it's definitely something that he can do. And a lot of times with these prospects, it's like can they catch? Yes, and then it's a complete mystery as to whether they'll be using that. Like Josh Jacobs is from your Packers is the obvious one. Came in as an elite pass catcher and didn't throw the ball for 3 years over at the Raiders. Like just didn't throw it for some reason, but now of course he's kind of showcasing. Hey, he caught an actual touchdown pass for your Packers not so long ago, breaking that. How long was that streak? Was it the longest streak ever in NFL history?
I don't know. It was quite a long one.
I think it was like the most receptions without a touchdown. Josh Jacobs finally snapped his own record.
It's kind of it is kind of crazy though. That's the thing. Like, and you look at it the other way around, and you got like Kenneth Walker. I can't remember how many catches he had in his final year at Michigan State, but it was like it might have been single digits. And everyone was like, "Can Kenneth Walker like catch a football?" And you watch him, and you're like, "Okay, I know there was only like 10 times, but his hands were good." And I'm not saying it's like his biggest strength, but it's so much of it is like different offenses ask players to do different things. Like, what's the saying? Evidence of absence isn't. No, whichever way around it is, absence of evidence. But like,
I know what you mean.
Just because you haven't seen him do it doesn't mean he can't. Like, if you see a guy who's consistently got bricks for hands and he's like dropping passes left, right, and center, then I'm worried. But like, Judkins is, the volume's not there, but like he's fine when he's called upon.
Yeah, absolutely, and that wraps up the end of the first one. But Jack, we can't let you go without mentioning one or two players that you have in your back pocket that you think this might be a good guy for the second round. This might be a good guy for later on in the draft. So hit us with as many as you're feeling like here. What are kind of your deeper stashes?
So I've got three.
Okay.
There's one who I'd probably say definitely is later than second round, but one guy who I think is going to rise up boards, and I've not really seen any buzz about him at all, is Brashard Smith from SMU, right? So I imagine a lot of people maybe aren't too familiar, especially if you're not a big college fan. So he's running back from SMU. He's 5'10", 196 pounds. Now, he's a converted wide receiver. So he started his career off at Miami. He was a 4-star recruit. He had offers from Alabama, LSU, I think Michigan, but he's a Florida native, so he stayed in Miami. He was there for 3 years, kind of, nothing special production-wise. He was a very good returner, though. He's a really, really good kick returner. He transferred to SMU in 2024, and he changed over to running back. Now, this is his first time playing the position, so you think, okay, well, what's he going to look like? Well, he's had 1,154 yards and 14 touchdowns, and he's averaging 6 yards per carry. So the answer is pretty good. He's also been used as a receiver, as you would expect for someone who was a converted wide receiver. He's had 30 catches for 275 yards. Now, I think it's really easy to see the fantasy upside with a guy like this because he is a true receiving back. Like, you can flex him out, and SMU often does. You can play him in the slot. He's not the biggest, so I probably wouldn't be playing him out wide a ton, but you can. He will be a mismatch weapon if he's left one-on-one versus linebackers, and he's going to be able to win against corners too. He good speed. The speed is there. He ran a 4.4 coming out of high school, so there's no questions there. Really great burst. I think if you watch his tape, one of the things that's really impressive is he's got that kind of stop-start quickness, like cuts on a dime type thing. He looks like a returner when he runs the football in that way that he just kind of slaloms through things. He, there's an element of his game, obviously, where you're looking at and saying, okay, he's still fairly new to the position. He'll sometimes bounce runs outside, maybe, where, he just wants to play in space and he needs to actually just take it kind of north-south. You're kind of willing to live with that a bit because it's like, okay, this is your first time playing a position. I think he's still only 21, so it's not like he's an older prospect who's come to the position late. He's not the biggest, right? 196 pounds is not big. But I think something I've learned over the last few years of doing this is I was always like, oh, if a guy's sub 200, like, no, I'm out. The NFL's kind of moving away from that being a thing. Like, this is kind of Jahmyr Gibbs' size. And I'm not saying he's got the long speed of Gibbs, but it's Jahmyr Gibbs' size. His game actually reminds me quite a bit of James Cook coming out of Georgia, because again, I love James Cook coming out of Georgia because he was a really, really talented pass catcher, and that just gave him a really high floor. And now we've seen he's managed to turn it into a really good career in Buffalo. Devon A-Chain, like, there's lots of these guys who are smaller and succeeding in the NFL. So I think he could be somebody who rises up boards as people kind of dig deeper into the tape.
I think he's a really, really good shot. I do like as weekly as I can. Sometimes it's every 2 weeks, depending how much time I get. But a weekly list of college players who just kind of caught my eye watching through some of the games. And Smith's been a guy that's been on there, I think, 4 or 5 different times, just because he just pop off the screen whenever you see him make those turning plays into a kick return. So I love that he's got a mention for the first time this year, Jack. You've been mentioning Brashad Smith.
There you
So
go.
good to get him mentioned on the show. So you got two more for us. Who's next?
Yeah, and these are maybe kind of deeper dives. I don't know. We'll see. The next one is LeJohntay Wester, the wide receiver from Colorado. So we've gone Colorado crazy here. This is our third Colorado player. I'm not a Colorado fan, just to confirm. So he's a fifth-year senior. So he's a little bit older. He spent his first 4 years at Florida Atlantic. Had a breakout 2023 season. Had about 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns. Transferred to Colorado for 2024. He's obviously not had the same amount of kind of targets as he did at Florida Atlantic, but he's been really quite productive. 880 yards and 10 touchdowns. He had a really big game this week just gone against Oklahoma State, which was a fantastic game. I think he had 175 yards, 2 touchdowns. Could have been more, to be honest. I was watching the tape the other day, and I'm like, he was open on like every play. He's a little bit small. I mean, I say no, he's not. He's not a little bit small. He's very small. He's 5'11" and 167 pounds, and that's his listed weight. So, and his listed height. I think he's shorter than 5'11". I hope he's not smaller than 167. Now, obviously, this is small, so that does give you some pause for thought. But the reasons I like him: good hands. He is really quick. I wouldn't say his long speed is anything special, but he's really quick. Short area quickness is fantastic. He's also a really, really good route runner. Really advanced, knows how to manipulate defenders, kind of create that late separation in the route. I think it's the kind of skill set that translates really well. If you look at guys who have come into the league and succeeded at similar size, the ones who've done well are the ones who have that route running chops. It's not the undersized speed guys, right? You look at maybe like a Tank Dell, right? Similar kind of size, yay small. Tank Dell doesn't have the greatest long speed, but his like short area quickness and fluidity is incredible. And so he wins just early and late in the route, and that's really translatable. Wester's got a bit of that to him. He's also a really good returner. I think he had a punt return for a touchdown against Utah this year. So just in terms of, again, I know that's not a fantasy relevant aspect of his game, but it will help him stick on a roster, right? If you're a smaller receiver who's probably not going to be a receiver 1 or 2, if you can return kicks or punts, you'll find a place on a roster. And if you can find a place on the roster, you can carve out a role. So he's a guy I'm really interested in. I think the testing will be interesting. I don't know if he's going to be. I think he might be at the Shrine Bowl for the All-Star circuit. So that will be interesting to see him kind of in the one-on-ones there. But definitely a player I've kind of enjoyed watching.
Yeah, they've got a couple of like wide receivers outside of Hunter. You're like, okay, there's a little something like the Jimmy Horn Juniors there as well. You're like, okay, there's like a little bit here, a little bit there. Like, they got some guys, right?
Even like Will Shepherd, who they got from Vanderbilt last year, like he was really productive at that. Problem is, it's like they went and got a bunch of these guys who are all capable of leading a kind of college team in receiving. But when you're sharing the field with all of the others and Travis Hunter, you're never going to have your biggest year.
Yeah, exactly. So he's definitely one to keep an eye out, though, for sure. And Jack, you've got one more sort of deeper sleeper then for us. Who's it going to be?
Yeah. So again, I think this is a guy who's going to rise up boards. It's Savion Williams from TCU, wide receiver. I say he's a wide receiver. He's kind of a bit of a gadget guy. So he's 6'5", 225 pounds. So he's a big boy. He's had a breakout 2024 season. He's had 60 catches, 614 yards, 6 touchdowns, which, I know that's not like eye-popping, but you add on top of that the fact that he's been used as a runner a lot. He's had 51 carries for 323 yards.
I have him listed as a running back. That's how much he's been. I've watched only a few games of him, and I had him down as a running back.
Yeah. He's like kind of a Swiss. He is it's such an overused term, but he is like the Swiss Army knife. He's just like basically TCU are like, he's a massive guy. He's a really good athlete. Just find a way of getting him the ball. So he's also, I said he's a good athlete. He was on Bruce Feldman's Freaks list. He's reportedly got a 40-inch vertical, done a 10.6 in the broad. That's 91st percentile and 79th percentile. So really good numbers. He's also apparently, and it depends how much stock you want to put into GPS tracking numbers, but he's apparently clocked 22.5 miles an hour. So he has the long speed as well. So physically, there's a lot to like. As I say, TCU use him kind of everywhere. He's out wide in the slot. They will use him as a running back, but then they also will often use him as a wildcat kind of quarterback. He's had some really kind of crazy highlight reel plays. Now, don't get me wrong, like he is, the way I would put it with him is he's more of a playmaker than a receiver at the moment. And the fact you've got him listed at running back, I think that speaks to it, right? He's a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none. But I think he's the kind of guy, he'll be very landing spot dependent. He's in the right circumstance and on the right team. There's a lot to be excited about there. But he's going to rise at boards, right? If you're that kind of size and you test like that, he's going to be one of those people in a few months' time after the combine, everyone's going, who the hell's this guy? So, just make sure you kind of have a look at him before then, because then you can tell everyone you already knew who he was.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, after he smashes the combine, he's that gained with that guy that randomly goes in like the second run. You're like, hold on, wait a minute. Where'd this guy come from? Yeah. Like, there's always one of those guys, right?
Yeah. There's always at least, especially at receiver. It's just like, some just freaky testing. It's like, very different kind of guy. But like, look at Xavier Worthy. Like, I know people were hiring him before the combine, but like that 40-yard dash did catapult him into the first round. Like, there's no question. So
yeah, he's got a chance for sure. And Jack, that brings us to the end of your 2025 way too early rookie mock draft. Thank you so much for coming on to the show, and of course, thanks to everybody at home listening. If you've not already, leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Leave a like if you didn't enjoy it as well. That'll be fun too. And make sure you hit subscribe too. And if you want to hit that bell, you'll never miss out on another draft. They're coming thick and fast. And Jack, you just want to remind everyone before we log off here, where can they find all your great work?
Yeah, probably Twitter is the best place, or whatever it's called these days. As we kind of ramp up for the draft, I'll be doing loads of film threads and stuff over there. Also over at the Touchdown, most of my kind of articles and stuff will be there. Depending on when this is going out, I'll have just posted my Week 14 scouting notebook. So there'll be some good stuff in there, including some stuff about LeJontay Wester. So if you want to read more about him, there'll be stuff in there.
Absolutely. Make sure you check it out. And once again, from me and from Jack, thank you for listening. Remember that for anything Dynasty you need to know, keep it locked on the Certified Inferno. See you next time.